The state government is already being sent a message to slow down a plan which could see the population of the Hunter increase by up to 50% or 300,000 people over the next 25 years. The Hunter Business Chamber says while it welcomes growth, there are questions the state government needs to answer before releasing a draft growth strategy for the region.
You've got a massive amount of influx of people, 300,000. Where are these people going to live? Where will they work? Where will they shop? Where will they go to school?
Mr Loade says the state government will need to make major investments in hospitals, roads, transport and education, as well as identifying parcels of land that could be used for new housing. The Department of Infrastructure, Planning and Natural Resources says it's consulted with peak environmental, business and community groups over the past 8 months. However, there are renewed calls for more community involvement.
And what we'd really like the state government to do is come clean and say what are they planning for.
DIPNA remains tight-lipped about its plans but did confirm today that more community consultation will be carried out once the strategy is released. And despite concerted efforts from the public, it seems the plan will be available for all to see come June. Colleen West, NBN News.
The evidence suggests that the commonest time we have these sorts of really big discussions about what somebody might have wanted is 24 hours after they've arrived in an intensive care unit.
A freakish wrist injury suffered in the club's final trial match back in February has cost Josh Perry dearly this season, but he's edging ever closer to a return. Not named in the team to play the Raiders today, a comeback this weekend hasn't been ruled out.
Given our situation, if he gets through the week and the specialist was happy for him to put his foot back in the water on Sunday, I think we'd gladly take him on board.
It would only strengthen a front row that's steadily making a presence once again. Hooker Danny Badiris' game time grows each week as his fitness grows, while Adam Woolno's return to partner Craig Smith is just what the club needed. The backup for the pack isn't performing too bad either.
It might be some sort of record in our calculation, but Luke Quigley made 37 tackles in the second half for us, and Blake Mueller wasn't too far behind him.
In fact, the whole team performance against the Bulldogs was one that would normally have resulted in a win. The Raiders on Sunday now become the #1 targets in which Newcastle could break the duck.
Some of the individual efforts have been simply outstanding, but we just need to get them all on the one day and see what we can sort out.
For 26 years, Brian Cecil cast a discerning eye over the operations of the Port of Newcastle, first as Assistant Signal Master and later as Master. He retired in 1994 but passed away only 3 years later, aged 60. Today, members of his family were on hand at the pilot station for the naming of the new pilot tender as the Brian Cecil.
And Brian was just a very, very well respected and liked gentleman within the organisation and within our community, and it's a great thrill to be able to name this vessel after him in his memory.
Brian's granddaughter applied the obligatory bubbly to the deck while his widow Carmel looked on proudly.
It's a great honour Didn't expect it at all. In fact, I thought it was somebody having a go at me when they rang up.
But it was no joke, just a grateful organisation wanting to repay many years of fine service.
He deserved it. Really did.
The $160,000 locally built vessel will be used to ferry harbour pilots between ships, wharves, the helipad and the pilot station in Newcastle Harbour, replacing the old tender, the Robert Whitmore. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
When you think Newcastle Harbour, rowing probably isn't the first thing that springs to mind. But in the shadows of the ships, there's one in particular who has rowed himself from a small regional club into the Australian under-23 quad team.
We always planned at the end of the season to take a break, go off somewhere and do something different. I never expected to do something this different. But
while Hugh has bucked the trend of winning selection via more traditional avenues, the 19-year-old is far from an overnight sensation. He followed his father John and brother into the sport some 12 years ago. He started school level before this season when he really fired. After an exhausting selection process, he won the bow seat in the national quad crew that already has pressure to perform at Lucerne.
they don't actually send an Australian team unless they think they can medal. So it's going to be a bit of work, but people think we can do it, so we'll have a go.
Believed to be the first Newcastle club rower to reach such an event since the turn of the century, the triple district champion has relocated to the AIS in Canberra, where he'll first get to know his teammates and then train for the big one in June.
Yeah, we have to really work on our styles, make sure we get everything together. There are 4 different rowers, 4 conflicting styles in the boat.
If they can do that, a medal is a real possibility.
We're always told to respect electricity. The power it harnesses can kill, and nationally, electrocution claims up to 40 lives each year. So it's little wonder people are sceptical when it comes to this small black box, a device its inventor claims will save lives.
When I first came up with the concept, I actually went to the patent attorney and said, I'm not sure if I can, patent this device because it's so simple.
The Protex switching technique eliminates earth from electricity. Using the device in this example, the builder is drilling a wall which has live wires behind it. When the drill bit makes contact, the power is shut off with no spark or injury. Without the device, the workman could have been killed by this mistake. Wayne hopes to have all homes wired up with this technology, including lighting systems.
In the household, there's 70% of the household appliances that have 2-pinned appliances, and they don't work with safety switches, they rely on an external earth.
The concept works with 12-volt DC power as well.
If the active or the neutral cable is shorted out to the frame of the car, the switch will activate and isolate that power, limiting the spark, and there's no fire.
Standards Australia will now test the device, which is not yet for sale. Adam McIlwright, NBN News.
The Newcastle Gilbert and Sullivan players have been at it since 1952, and some of the original players are still treading the boards today.
Yes, I was in the Mikado chorus in 1952. 17 I was.
Seen here in the purple shawl, Marie Dives plays an alcoholic in the latest production of the madcap trial by jury, where a bride takes her groom to court for breaching his promise of marriage and ends up marrying the judge. The company has staged at least one show each year for the past 53, and because Gilbert and Sullivan only wrote about a dozen musicals, they've repeated each one almost 5 times. Marie says it's a simple formula that keeps audiences coming back.
Well, we run a good show to start off with. We always have good music and good actors on the stage. And everyone gets in and does something.
The latest show, featuring trial by jury and HMS Pinafore, opens tomorrow night at the Grammar School Hall in Union Street.
This is the latest weapon in the battle against drink drivers. It's a breath test unit that simply requires a driver to speak into it, detecting the presence of alcohol on their breath. If it registers a positive reading, police then test the person with a traditional breathalyzer, which the driver has to blow into. So what's the advantage? Police say they're more accurate and cut down on time, money and waste.
It is faster instrument to use, yes, but it's also saves a lot more with the use of used tubes, having to dispose of the old used tubes.
They're gradually being rolled out across the northern region, fitted into all highway patrol cars, and their implementation is timely, with alarming statistics showing that for every 85 breath tests police take in the northern region, there's a positive reading, and the figures are even worse for the hunter.
Police breath tested 2,020 motorists. From that, there was 36 drink driving offences detected. Now that equates to 1 in 56 people stopped were over the limit, and that's very disturbing figures.
From tomorrow night until Sunday, police from all Lower Hunter area commands will band together for their latest enforcement, focusing on drink driving and speeding. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Nick Carl came to Newcastle with a big reputation, but until tonight a back injury has kept the Socceroo midfielder under wraps.
I'm very excited being up here. I love it here in Newcastle, and I'm definitely looking forward to having a great season with the Jets.
The Jets faced some genuine class during their loss to the young Socceroos at the weekend. That standard can also be expected against strong State League side Sydney Olympic at Adamstown Oval tonight.
After the other day was a good hit out for us, and if we can get one more good hit out before the first game, I think we should be right to go.
Meantime, the Jets expect to be able to announce the signing of a marquee player by Friday. In other soccer news, former Newcastle United player Greg Owens has signed to play with Malaysian club Johar FC. He'll be playing alongside a former Newcastle teammate, Asala Massi. Todd Nardi, NBN News.
We need to be very certain before we make a serious decision as this with our community and with council.
Hayley Wilson is a young woman who doesn't waste time. After taking her first plane ride 4 years ago, she's gained her commercial pilot's licence and her instructor's certification and has now received a Civil Aviation Safety Authority award for excellence in flight theory. But isn't a 19-year-old a bit young to be an instructor?
A lot of people say that. Yeah, I probably am about as young as you can be, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Some people worry about young instructors. I think it's probably good because we're fresh, straight out of training ourselves. We know what's expected.
After completing her training, she landed an instructor's job at the Avondale College School of Aviation and is now helping others realise their dreams.
Probably my favourite moment teaching at the moment was when Brad and Jarrett and Ian all went solo. I don't know who had a bigger grin, me or them.
The long-term ambition of this inspirational young flyer is to be a pilot with the Royal Flying Doctor Service. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Denied by the Dogs in the final minute means the headache just grows for Michael Hagan. The Knights are now none from 6, prompting some suggestions Hagan should perhaps step down from his role as Queensland coach.
Well, I don't think that's an issue, mate, at the moment, because that's not going to happen.
Origin will be played over 6 weeks, starting next month. Hagan says he'll be at every Knights game and most training runs during that time and is not concerned by criticism for taking on the 2 roles.
Oh, that may come, but I mean, that's, I knew that when I accepted the job back in October, mate, that, you never know where your team's going to be sitting at that time.
When Hagan coached Queensland in last year's Origin series, the Knights had 1 win from 6. The Newcastle club does believe he can manage both positions.
Look, you've got to be there at training and you've got to get back for the games, and Mick certainly knows that.
Some pressure will be lifted if the Knights beat the Raiders this week.
It's probably the first time since I can remember where I think we're really asking people to give us a hand. We need people there to come and support us. I think everyone was there last week, saw how much it lifted the boys.
Todd Nardi, NBN News.
There's no cheesy theme music and no short red shorts. But of course, that's why this is the real thing. Lifeguards representing 18 council areas from the east coast of Australia will spend the next 3 days honing their skills and comparing notes in Newcastle.
The conference is a good opportunity for networking, but it's also a good opportunity to look at best practice lifeguard systems and procedures.
Often involved in rescues with the Westpac Rescue helicopter crews, lifeguards today witness 2 scenarios which take place when big seas make it too dangerous for them to bring patients back to shore.
To show people what's involved with winching people out and what happens when the winch doesn't work and they can just drop someone on the beach with a static line.
Tomorrow the conference moves indoors for a range of topical sessions. Jessica Phyllis, NBN News. One person takes their own life in the Hunter every 3 days, while 2,500 people suicide every year in Australia. For loved ones, the grieving process can be an isolating one, clouded by shame and guilt, but Lifeline is providing exactly what its name suggests. A program will be made available from next week, offering small group support and professional counselling services for those who are grieving.
They're able to support one another to make sense out of it, to move on in their lives. It doesn't take the pain away, but it helps them come to terms with it.
The 6-week program, which was successfully trialled on the Central Coast, will be run on a needs basis in Newcastle.
The grief process can go on forever, for all their lives, if there isn't some interceptory help.
If you are at risk of suicide or know someone who is, Lifeline offers a 24-hour crisis telephone counselling service. Colleen West, NBN News.
She may look like a typical high school student, but Helen McInnes has the potential to become one of Australia's top business leaders. The Merewether High School student has completed an accelerated HSC course in business studies, in which she scored 97 and was ranked 5th in the state. She's also undertaking a marketing degree at the University of Newcastle, not to mention the several state public speaking and mock trial accolades. All this at the tender age of 15. So why the passion for business?
I've been exposed to a lot of business in my early life. My dad owned a few small businesses, and then when I came to Merewether and did subjects like commerce, business studies, economics, legal studies, I've found that that's just where I want to go. And my university course has pushed me in that direction as well.
Today, the Financial Review published a full page on Helen's achievements inside a special anniversary magazine, selected as an up-and-coming business person.
I was a little bit shocked, but it was very nice to be even considered for that sort of role.
And while she admits she doesn't read the Fin Review daily, it seems that may change.
Having looked at this edition, it's looking pretty promising for my economics and legal studies, so maybe in future.
Once she's completed her schooling, she hopes to study commerce law at university, and after that it seems the business world is at her feet.
For the professionals who care for people on our beaches, life has become more complicated, not only because of skyrocketing litigation, but because of the new ways we like to use the beach.
There's all sorts of recreational activities that weren't around years ago, things like jet skis, kite surfing spring to mind. So it's an ever-changing recreational activities that we've got to keep abreast of and work out ways to regulate it so everyone can come to the beach and be safe and everyone can use their areas of the beach and have a great time.
Lifeguards attending this week's conference put their skills to the test today after a week of discussions about beach life.
At times, some activities won't be allowed. When we have lots of people at the beach, it certainly is not on to play a game of soccer. It won't be on to have kite surfers coming in close.
This generation of lifeguards is also becoming the best trained.
We've got to raise the bar each year. And what I mean by that is we've got to train our lifeguards up in things like jet ski rescue, analgesic gases, spinal care, defibrillation. So we've got to keep raising the bar so our councils can be confident that liability and litigation are kept to their minimum.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
The number of students enrolled in the heavy vehicle and plant mechanics course at the Curry TAFE has doubled in the past year, reflecting a growing need for skilled workers in that field. And finally, it seems the state government has cottoned on to the trend, today launching a scheme to nurture skilled labour in the coalfields.
There are jobs available, there are skill shortages and there are kids looking for work.
The results of a skills assessment of the Cessnock local government area estimates an extra 580 jobs in the next 12 months will be created, almost half of those in construction and another 100 in retail.
From the two developments that are about to open, the Big W and the Crown Plaza, they will create roughly around 500 jobs, and that'll be mainly young people.
The report, conducted over 2 years, also found skill gaps in supervision, communication, literacy and numeracy, computer skills and some hospitality skills. A project coordinator will be employed to help link the jobs with people. That position will be advertised next week. However, with such an emphasis on skills and training, the state government would not confirm if more places would be made available here at the Curry TAFE. There's no doubt the Hunter Economic Zone will translate into employment positions. Whether they can be filled, though, remains to be seen. Adam McKilrick, NBN News. 6 years ago, it was a cottage industry. Today, olive production in the Hunter has become big business. Some 500 tonnes of olives are expected to be picked this harvest. It's hardly a glut, yet much more than last season.
Typically olives tend to be a biannual producer, so they'll have a big year and then the second year they'll take it a bit easy and then another big year again.
But whatever the amount produced, local growers must compete with imported olive products in what's become a competitive market.
We're all trying to compete on an international level, so we've got to try and pitch our prices somewhere similar to what the European market is, even though they're subsidised.
These olives are used to make oil and will be in bottles for sale within 2 months. Harvesting began early last month and is due to wind up in a week or so. Adam McKilrick, NBN News.
The man's family and neighbours were kept behind a police cordon in Avon Street at Mayfield today, wanted for questioning over a range of matters. Police say the man slipped into a house in Avon Street near Club Phoenix and refused requests to come out and speak to them. Heavily armed police were called in when it was feared that the man may have armed himself with a knife. A command post was set up in Y Street, which was also blocked off. It's thought the incident may be linked to an earlier home invasion and an explosion which destroyed the interior of a house at Waratah West early this morning. Firefighters were called to the dwelling in Jack Norman Street when the house burst into flames following a loud explosion inside. No one was home at the time of the blast.
Touching down this morning from Austria, only a handful knew Ned Zelic was even in the country. Even club owner Con Constantine was only informed an hour before the former Socceroo captain walked through his doors. His new teammates as shocked as anyone. As poker machines echoed, it was clear the club had hit its own jackpot with their marquee player.
They basically convinced me that this is a place where we will be having some success, and obviously that's another important aspect for me.
After the Terry Venables saga and Paul Ocon falling through the club's fingers, this payday was worth the wait.
When I saw him walk through, tears come down my eyes.
It took some time for new teammates as well.
Beautiful, it's like seeing a rock star in real life being front row.
It is a massive signing, don't get me wrong, it is.
Zelic will have little time to settle in. The 33-year-old will train with the team tomorrow morning, and 7 days after that, it's game time.
Obviously, I know I'm going to be under the spotlight, but that's something that is more or less in the back of my mind at the moment. I'm purely concentrating on what I have to do here.
Once an attacking midfielder, it's in defence that Zelic will command in Jets colours, as they now seem ready for takeoff. Jim Callanan, NBN News. Desperate to make his return on home turf, Josh Perry did everything he could to convince himself he could play on Sunday. But the doctor's opinion was final. Wait one more week.
I'm pretty confident I can get through a game. It's just, it's not probably worth risking for one game. If it's going to be, that much better next week, to miss this week would probably be the best thing for, everyone involved.
The news was a little better for centre George Carmont, who showed signs a knee injury may not keep him out, but a final decision on the squad to play the Raiders will come after tomorrow's training session. Canberra, meanwhile, has its own concerns. The Green Machine has 12 missing through injury or suspension, and some of the new bloods are still coming up to speed with their opposition.
They've only had a couple of wins this year, so...
We've had none, mate.
Are you serious?
Named as 18th man for the Raiders, former Newcastle junior Jermaine Ale could well make his NRL debut on his old home ground.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's everything that I wanted it to be, so hopefully get the opportunity.
After a year at the Roosters, which included a Jersey Flegg premiership, Ale is now a Raider, but knows all about playing at Newcastle, given he spent several years here in the red and blue as a junior. Jim Callanan, NBN News. It was the classic tale of youth versus experience for the 53rd final of the time-honoured tournament, and Tony White got away to a great start in the biggest match of his career at Lowlands Bowling Club. A neighbouring car alarm, though, was enough to test anyone's nerves. Unsettling may be, but Wayne Lambourne was still forced to attack late in this one as he picked up 7 shots over the closing ends. It wasn't enough though, White breaking through for the win after a 41-end marathon. Action kicks off tonight in Newcastle Rugby League with Macquarie hosting the Terrace at Toronto. On Sunday, South and West renew their rivalry while the Blues head to Belmont. In Newcastle and Hunter Rugby Union, both Hamilton and the Waratahs will hope to hold down a share of first place, while Lake Macquarie hopes to continue its strong start to the season against Merewether. And in the NBN Soccer League, Highfields host the Stags tonight, while Western meet Hamilton tomorrow. 3 games on Sunday will complete the round, with the Edgeworth Eagles juggernaut rolling on to Adamstown.
The start of 2005 has been riddled with inconsistent performances. Now the Broncos, they lose by 46 one week, the next they win by 40. The Roosters are inconsistent for the first time in years without Freddie Fittler. The Dragons, well, it's impossible to pick their form. The Bulldogs, look, it's across the board. The question is why? In rugby league terms, youth equals inconsistency. A rookie's individual form can be full of mistakes one week and the next week he turns out a blinder. Now, given the fact the average age of an NRL team is around 23, we're finding out that collectively having so many young players is causing the team as a whole to have erratic shifts in form. Now, some clubs are doing their best to combat this. This week we find that 4 clubs are using players who had previously retired to boost their experience. Now, South have recruited Ben Walker, the Broncos brought back 36-year-old Darren Smith, and the Knights have been using Craig Smith with great results, and Terry Hill is in the same boat there at Manly. It's also been noted that the Raiders have had a great start of the year, and that's largely due to the purchase of 33-year-old Jason Smith, along with Matt Adamson, who returned from the English competition and have been revelations for the Raiders. Anyway, on to round 8's tips. Tonight, the informed Seagulls could only strengthen their title aspirations with a big game in Brisbane, but I reckon the Broncos will be too tough. Tomorrow, I like the Storm, Bulldogs and the Cowboys all to win at home. Sunday, well, it's the Panthers, Knights and the Dragons I reckon will win. Have a great weekend. I'll see you all next week.
It's pretty hard when you don't have any town water. And
whereabouts is your property?
Sawyers Gully, just out this side of Curry. And it's pretty difficult when you try and reuse your water 3 or 4 times before you discard it, you know. We haven't had any rain in the last 2 weeks, but hopefully with the weather change that's been promised, we'll do all right this weekend.
I'll see what I can do about that.
Thanks very much.
It's the 22nd year the field days have been run, and over 3 days there'll be around 30,000 visitors. Now that means a busy time for the director of the Tokal Agricultural Centre, Cameron Archer.
particularly right across the farming spectrum in terms of people who are on the land, what groups that are associated with the land, groups associated with animals, groups associated with plants, land care, fish, the whole lot. So it's right across the board, as well as the products of the land through wineries, food production and so on. So we try to get into every area of agriculture and life on the land, and that's probably why we've been so successful.
It's a lesson where the professionals become trainees. Members of the prestigious USPGA, Ben Doyle and Bobby Schaefer, are in Charlestown to teach a range of techniques and customise a swing that suits each golfer.
What's needed is more and more precision, and that comes from more understanding. As Ben would say, Ben Doyle, that we all have the brain power to do this, we don't have the information, and we need the information to be able to apply it.
A handful of these golfers teach the sport at courses around the country. But in this 3-day clinic, it's a whole new ball game as the masters go to great lengths to define the level of a golf swing.
That's probably the main thing that I would have learnt from Ben Doyle, Bobby Schaefer, just how precise our golf action actually is.
Most of the people here, though, are your everyday golfer, paying up to $1,000 each for the tutorial. Not Lorraine Atkin, however. She won a contest in which this experience was first prize, but she's not top of the class just yet.
Wrong grip, wrong this, wrong that. But I'll get better. They reckon by 3 days I'll be sensational.
If you cruise the waters of Port Stephens, you're almost guaranteed to spot at least one dolphin. Today we hit the jackpot. And while our bottlenose friends are used to the crowds, there were extra eyes trained on the deep blue between 11 o'clock and 11:30 this morning for the annual dolphin census. By stationing teams at 30 different locations across the bay at the same time, National Parks will be able to determine how many dolphins are in Port Stephens. Also looking for the marine mammals, volunteers scattered along the shore at 90 different locations.
The sites are located around the margins of Port Stephens, both on the southern and western and northern shores, and they're spread out evenly around.
Information collected during the census is handed to National Parks and Wildlife, which compares the data against previous censuses. This afternoon, with 50% of sighting sheets returned, 61 dolphins had been spotted.
Generally speaking, we're looking at between 80 and 100 dolphins permanently occupying the port.
Jessica Phyllis, NBN News. This is how Australians answered the call for help following the tsunami. This is how the Sri Lankan government responded. Dozens of shipping containers still stranded in the dockyard because our charities can't pay excessive customs duties to get the goods into the country. But there is some positive news for the people of the Hunter who donated to the Anglican Church's Samaritan charity.
The information we've been given from Sri Lanka is that our goods, the containers we sent earlier this year, did clear customs and have been distributed.
Samaritans has used money that was donated to buy more goods that will be shipped over next week.
We've been told that people need bicycles. We've also been told that people need fishing gear. A lot of the people have lost their income because they used to fish.
And it's almost certain the gear won't be held up like this.
My understanding is that the government recognises that these goods are what is needed now, and they'll be given priority to get through the system.
Jessica Phyllis, NBN News. A semi-trailer laden with diesel collided with a bus carrying developmentally delayed passengers on Burwood Road in Dudley. Some of the passengers were injured, others wandered off into the bush. Luckily, it was a training exercise. Fire, police and ambulance officers were involved in the mock rescue, as well as crews from the SES, RFS and National Parks and Wildlife Service. When emergency services arrived, it was a matter of evaluating the situation and planning a response. But throughout the exercise, scenarios will change and tactics will have to be readjusted to suit. The aim?
To make sure that the procedures that they get taught from various academies and courses that they attend to give them rescue qualifications are tested in the field.
This exercise took 9 months to plan and was designed to test a variety of skills.
MVA vehicle extractions with a chemical component. We also wanted to test then roping techniques for cliff retrievals, also then searching through the bush areas as well.
It also ensures all the emergency services are communicating effectively. Jessica Phyllis, NBN News.
The Hunter Valley Training Company, which assists around 1,300 apprentices in New South Wales, has extended its helpful hand to these young men. They're being offered a free 7-week program that could put many of them on the path to finding employment in the metal trades. Today they were given a taste of what that would be like.
I've been learning about welding, electronics and fixing some machine when it's broke.
It's giving me ideas, Maybe I'll leave school or go to TAFE to start working. So it's a beautiful thing.
The program will go some way to addressing the shortage of skilled workers in Australia while giving refugees skilled job options.
Certainly someone's been able to make up their mind probably what they want to do. Others, no, they're not interested, and that's fine because that's what it's all about anyway.
Still on education, and more than 40 Hunter TAFE students have been recognised for their academic achievements at an award ceremony in Newcastle. Hamilton's Kate Woods took the top gong, the Hunter Institute Medal for her studies of the environment. Colleen West, NBN News.
It's a win that's become folklore. A young Aussie who unexpectedly beat the world at the 1984 Los Angeles Games. And even today, John Sieben gets excited about it. Happy to pass on what he can to the next generation, Sieben spoke with swimmers in Newcastle today, but will meet his heir apparent Nick Donald tomorrow, the teenager who broke his 23-year-old age record in January.
I'm really looking forward to him to going on and bigger and better things. He's started the journey. He's got a long way to go, but he's made a start.
Donald was overjoyed when Sieben phoned through congratulations on the record swim, and the 16-year-old would love to only further emulate the feats of this Olympic gold medalist.
He got that record. 2 years later, he won at the Olympics. So, you know, it's 3 years to the Olympics now. Let's see, hopefully I can sort of copy that.
He knows that will be a huge task and will resume training soon as he relocates to Sydney to join his new coach.
You've got to work even harder and improve and find ways to improve yourself.
A few months ago it was just a good idea, but an invitation to rejoin Sydney's Shoot Shield competition has been endorsed by Newcastle and Hunter clubs and preparation has begun. First off, the coach, and the union is leaving no stone unturned.
We're casting the net as wide as we can. We're advertising in Sydney and in Brisbane and on a number of websites, so there might even be an international flavour to it.
An ex-Wallaby has already approached Newcastle, and with Australian mentor Eddie Jones agreeing to lend his weight to the search, it augurs well for a union keen to snare top-quality applicants.
Part of the job description is that the coach is able to not only develop players, but we may need to recruit players to fill key positions.
Recently signed by new Super 14 franchise, the Western Force, World Cup forward Ben Darwin will also assist in the selection process that should come up with an answer by June 30. Basketball, and while the Hunter Pirates franchise sale is rounded out, players are working out what their options are. 3 remain contracted, while Coach of the Year Adrian Hurley has spoken with others, including Brendan Mann. The co-captain, whose 2 years here have been dogged by injury, may still play again for the Pirates, while he's also held discussions with Adelaide. Fellow captain Ben Melmoth, meanwhile, is recovering from ankle surgery. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
During the last 19 years, Lorraine Dunn has stretched and squeezed the exercise out of Hunter and Lake Macquarie seniors, her programs now recognised nationally as a good practice model. A passion for keeping the oldies active has earned Lorraine the Australian fitness industry's Lifetime Achievement Award.
The human body is so amazing, and an older human body is even more. A heart that's been beating for 80 years is far more amazing to me than an 18-year-old heart.
While she's also a fitness author and lecturer, it's the hands-on work with Gwen, Bess, Kath and all the other girls and guys that's won Lorraine the accolades.
She's taught us to step outside our comfort zone, to be daring.
Todd Nardi, NBN News.
It's not every day students at the Conservatorium of Music in Newcastle can get their hands on an 1872 violin worth a cool $150,000, and that's a cheap one.
I have this gorgeous Guadagnini instrument in my hands, and I've really never had a chance more than 10 seconds from time to time to play such a beautiful instrument.
It's one of dozens owned by Alfredo Primavera, a violin maker who's earning a name for himself in the so-called holy city of violins, Cremona in Italy. The father of 3 has been visiting Melbourne and Newcastle, sharing his extensive knowledge and love of a product that's become more than just his bread and butter.
Instruments will last hundreds of years, so the instrument is actually never ours. It's something that we own, that we have to pass on to the next generation.
Alfredo has worked alongside some of the world's greatest musicians and models his violins on the reputable Stradivarius, which today sell for anywhere between $1 and $12 million.
These instruments are owned by probably every great musician that can afford it in the world. So, you know, it becomes a good model for us to use.
While he does trade some very old and expensive instruments, Alfredo says he likes to think of himself as the maker of affordable violins, selling his own product for around $15,000. Colleen West, NBN News.
Every Thursday, Laura Kent comes here to the South Lakes Carers Respite Centre for lunch and a few laughs, but today was extra special. Laura turns 106 on Saturday. Her friends decided it called for an early celebration. The sprightly senior still lives at home in Kurrenbog with the help of a carer. Her weekly social date here a highlight.
So look what they've done for me. It's marvellous.
Good company, plenty of prayer and clean living, part of Laura's secret to a long, healthy life.
It gradually comes, you know. It don't come like that. You got to, you know, try and live a life.
And she's certainly done that. Laura plans to kick up her heels again on Saturday, celebrating with family. Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News. Push and shove as our cameraman tries to capture the action. The drama sparked by this morning's raid. Assisted by police and other government agencies, including the Tax Office, Centrelink and WorkCover, the Immigration Department swooped on the construction site, detaining 5 men. They're all from China. It's unclear how long they'd been here. The raid apparently came as a surprise. The foreman told us he was unaware of any immigration issues with any of the workers. The Immigration Department says it's now transferred 3 of the men to the Villawood Detention Centre, 2 having been identified as unlawful non-citizens and another having breached visa conditions. The 2 others are still being interviewed. Management of the Hunter Valley Golf and Country Club site wasn't available for comment. Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News.
Our city is beautiful, the lake is its biggest asset, it should be clean and tidy.
This is the thunderstorm that rolled in from off the coast around sunrise. Within hours it had dumped 30 to 50 millimetres of rain. For the residents of 10 homes near the Raymond Terrace Cinema Centre, the downpour delivered a flash flood. While the neighbourhood has a recognised flood risk, today's inundation of Bourke Street East and part of Adelaide Street happened within minutes.
The rain started coming down. I was working downstairs and heard some air bubbles coming up through the toilet. Went upstairs, had a shower, got changed, and when I come back down, it was flooded in.
It was just one of several bodies of flood water Port Stephens Council workers had to pump out, with lower level parts of the nearby council administration building also affected. One upside for the residents is that with Councillor Hodges being among the victims, he'll be seeking answers as to why.
We'll be speaking to the flood engineer and the drainage engineer, and mate, we'll be sorting this problem out quick smart, I can tell you that.
The weather has also been blamed for a spate of road accidents across Port Stephens. A 19-year-old Stockton woman rushed by a rescue helicopter to Newcastle's John Hunter Hospital from this accident on Nelson Bay Road, Anna Bay. Gary Blair, NBN News.
Having so many children in a children's hospital without air conditioning, not enough food, not enough care for them, people dying because they need an operation, they just can't get it, is really tough.
They may be getting on a bit in years, but these pink ladies have the youthful enthusiasm of teenagers. Each morning the Pinkies, as they're affectionately known, stock up their trolleys and hit the wards at Port Macquarie Base Hospital, delivering magazines, lollies and other comforts of home. Any odd jobs that need doing, the Pinkies are there in a flash. And the motivation is nothing more than simple human kindness.
Oh, helping people. Pickety people that are out of town and don't have visitors, and if those sort of people, and people in town that don't have family, we do their washing for them, and it's nice to have a chat with them.
Apart from helping people, thousands of Australian volunteers devote their time and money to rescuing native wildlife, with groups such as Wires and the Koala Preservation Society. Jeff and Betty Bartlett from Port Stephens are fully trained volunteers with the Native Animal Trust Fund and have nursed over 300 injured or sick koalas. It's an around-the-clock job, the couple dedicating their lives to conserving the threatened species.
We're doing it for the animals. It's not for us. It's for the animals, and to try and save, especially koalas, for the future generation. If we don't, they won't exist.
It can be extremely emotional and traumatic work with some disappointments, but they say there are plenty of success stories as well.
The highs are obviously the releases. That's our main charter, is to rescue, care, rehabilitate and release back to the wild.
And like all of the voluntary organisations we've profiled this week, more volunteers are needed.
Volunteers for other species are highly in demand, whether it's birds, possums, reptiles, all that sort of thing. And we desperately need those people coming forward.
And even if you can't become a volunteer, everyone can help, simply by calling the 24-hour hotline if you see a native animal in distress. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
They've been to the entertainment centre countless times before, but never as owners of a national basketball team.
We love coming and we've enjoyed it, and we were really pleased to see it come back to Newcastle, but no, never in our wildest dreams did we think we'd be part owners of it.
As far as commitment goes, shareholder David Marshall gives the term a whole new meaning.
We're not actually business people in the true sense of it. The money that we're putting in, it's our house.
A brave bet considering none of the players or coach have signed. But with the NBL giving the sale its blessing, the consortium says contract talks are open, with Adrian Hurley among the priorities.
We have had meetings and we've discussed players, what options of players that we've got, and it's just the fact that he's away on holidays at the moment that we'd be speaking with him now.
And the new owners want home games at the entertainment centre for the next 2 years, ruling out for now a move to Thornton. Adam McKilrick, NBN News. It wasn't that long ago when redhead triathlete Boyd Conrick didn't think much of turning 30, but he since has, and instead of being over the hill, he's still climbing them. A break in the weather permitted some light training at King Edward Park today, ahead of Sunday week's Japan Ironman, a 9-hour race.
It's on an island off the southern tip of Japan, so it'll be really tough as the bike winds its way around the bottom of a extinct volcano.
Conrick has an impressive CV over short distances, but has since moved on to bigger races, with next year's Hawaii Ironman not far from his thoughts. Boxing, and a confident Jamie Pittman lines up for his third professional bout on the Central Coast tomorrow night. It's not a title fight, nevertheless the Newcastle-based boxer accepted the challenge with open arms, part of a grand plan.
More fights, more TV shows and better and more opponents.
a boxing promoter's dream. And in netball, the Jaegers too have high hopes tomorrow night, out to prove last week's win on the road was no fluke. The squad of 12 is on its way to Queensland to play the Firebirds, with 2 players to make their season debut. Adam McIlwright, NBN News.